On Halloween, the first scream did not come from a haunted house. It came from the sidewalk in front of the blue porch light where the candy bowl sat, and it cut through the cold night like a knife. I heard it while my son and I crossed the cul-de-sac, plastic fangs clicking against his teeth, my breath fogging when the wind shifted. Leaves scraped across the pavement like brittle claws. The houses were cheerful on the surface, with inflatable ghosts and buck-toothed pumpkins, but the spaces between the houses were black and deep, and the sound came from that kind of darkness. It was not a prank scream. It had the thin, wire-tight edge of real terror. Then everything went quiet, as if the whole street had put a finger to its lips. We both stopped. He looked up at me through a skull mask, the elastic band tugging his hair. I told him to stay close. A dog barked behind the fence to our left, a hard, rapid bark that hit and hit again, braver than it was smart. Something moved where the yard met the alley. A shadow pressed itself flat, then lifted, like a man unfolding after a long crouch. But the shoulders came up too high and the head turned without the neck turning with it. For a second, I thought it was a person in a suit, a big man in a rough costume, but the smell hit me. Not garbage, not wet leaves. A raw animal smell like hot iron and fur that never dries, layered with something sweet and coppery, like old pennies on the tongue. A girl in a witch hat ran past us, candy spilling behind her like a trail, shoes slapping the concrete. She did not see us. Her eyes had gone past thought. She looked back once, tripped, skinned her knee, and kept going. I opened my mouth to ask where her parents were, but the fence at our left flexed, chain links tense, as if a weight leaned on it from the other side. The cheap metal post creaked. The dog on the other side lost its courage mid-bark and dropped to a whine that shook like a loose window. I told my son to go to the porch, ring the bell, and stand inside the blue light. He moved, slow at first, then faster when the fence groaned again. I stayed put. My hands were empty. I picked up the fallen candy. A small chocolate bar had split. It looked like a broken tooth. The smell thickened. Breath steamed against the fence like something on the other side was inches from the mesh. I could hear it breathe, slow and patient, like a runner who has not started the run but knows it will win. Then silence again, the worst part, because silence has room in it for guesses. Footsteps thumped on the porch as the door opened. The woman who lived there looked out, smiling for the costume, smiling for the little trick, then seeing my face and the way I stood. Her smile died by degrees. She asked if everything was all right. I said yes, then no, then asked if she could call someone. She kept the door open for my son with one hand and held her phone in the other. She did not step out. With the blue light behind them, they were shapes in a rectangle, safe for now. I did not want to bring whatever was outside into anyone's house. There are things a house does not survive. The chain link creaked once more. Then something backed away from it with a hushed rush through dry shrubs. The sound went left, toward the alley, then right, then left again, as if it wanted us to hear indecision. I looked at the woman and told her to lock the door and call the police. She started to say a name, like she recognized me from the street, like we were neighbors, and this was a small problem we could handle with flashlights and polite voices, but the alley light stuttered and went out. In the same breath, a low shape streaked across the gap between the two houses on the far side of the street, blacker than the shadows. Shoulders rolling, head low, forelimbs longer than any normal dog, back legs kicking dirt in an arc. It did not cross like an animal. It crossed like a rumor, fast and wrong, and then it was gone. The wind changed. I could hear kids 2 blocks over, laughter high and broken, and the deeper voices of parents calling names that sounded too small for the night. I could also hear a scrape like nails on wood from the direction of the park path, the little paved ribbon that cut behind the houses and led to the school. Every Halloween, the park path filled with kids and flashlights and nervous bravery. I felt stupid for all the times I'd called that path safe. Another scream came from that way. This time there were 2 voices, one older, one young, and the older voice tried to make a joke while it broke. I made a choice without thinking. I told my son to stay inside the blue light. He begged to come. I told him no. The woman pulled him in. The door shut. The lock clicked. I went for the alley and the smell hit me again, stronger, as if the air had been cut open and something inside it was spoiling. At the corner, a plastic tombstone flapped on a metal stake like a tongue. Candy wrappers moved along the ground as if pulled by strings. The park path ahead was a narrow slash between fences and hedges, lit by the occasional porch light leaking through boards. A plastic skeleton hung from a maple branch by a fishing line, spinning. Something had snapped the skull clean off and set it back on wrong. I took out my phone and the screen jittered with static, lines running down it as if my fingers were wet. The signal icon showed full bars. The battery icon dropped to red, then jumped back to green, then froze. 3 kids came at me from the path. 2 in superhero masks, and 1 with a smeared vampire face. 1 carried a pillowcase. 1 had a broken bucket. 1 clutched an empty hand like it still held something. I asked where their parents were. The girl with the vampire mouth said behind us in a voice that did not fit her throat. I asked what happened. She opened her mouth wider. Her teeth were chattering so hard that fine white chips popped off like salt. I told them to go to the blue porch. They ran, not because I told them to, but because the hedges on both sides of the path made that tight little sound like a zipper when something moves through leaves without touching branches. The zipper sound moved with us, sometimes to our left, sometimes to our right, never far, never seen. A slatted fence cast stripes of light on the concrete. For a second, I saw a shape pass those stripes, and the stripes did not wrap around it like they should. They stopped at its edge, as if even light did not want to touch it. The path opened on the school field. The night sky was clean and sharp. The moon was a coin with teeth marks. Costumed kids dotted the grass in clusters, and a line of jack-o'-lanterns burned along the low wall by the basketball court. Triangles of light that should have looked funny and friendly, now strained and too wide. Beside the court, 5 teenagers stood on scooters and pretended not to be watching the tree line. A woman in a long coat called a name again and again, each repetition more empty than the last. Then everyone looked at the same spot at once. It was not because they saw something. It was because something in the body knows when a shape is about to come out from behind a tree and wants to make sure the eyes get to it first. Between 2 firs, a tall figure stepped into the open. It came forward on the balls of its feet like a sprinter reining in speed. It was wrong in ways that the mind tries to rearrange into normal. The fur was patchy as if it had been burned and then grown back through scars. The arms were too long, and the hands were not paws but not hands either, with long fingers that curled backward at the knuckles like hooks warming above a fire. The head had the right angles for a wolf, but the jaw did not sit right, and the eyes were yellow in a way that did not catch light but made it. It looked over the field like a shopper looking over produce. It ignored the teenagers who tried to look hard. It ignored the pumpkins. It ignored anyone who pretended not to see it. It looked at the woman in the long coat and held her in its gaze until her shoulders folded in, as if a thread had been pulled. Then it lifted its nose and breathed. I felt that breath skim my skin like dry heat. It set one hand on the low wall, as casual as a man about to hop a fence he has hopped 100 times. It did not jump the wall. It walked along the pumpkins, slow, sniffing each one, as if reading them. When it reached the last, it dipped 2 fingers into the mouth and pinched out the candle. The night grew 1 shade deeper without that tiny flame, and you could feel the difference like a missing word. The woman in the long coat found her voice and screamed. That broke the spell. Kids bolted. Parents shouted. The teenagers on scooters tried to roll away, and one fell, then crawled. The Dogman did not chase the ones who ran. It watched them go and turned its head, not the way an animal turns to keep a moving object in view, but the way a person checks exits. It hopped from the wall with a light thud and crossed the court. The zipper sound rushed along both sides of the path again, and I realized the noise had never been a single body in leaves. It had been claws dragged across wood in 2 places at once. My son's voice rose in my head, not a memory but a current thing, as if the space between me and the blue porch was a string pulled tight. I could feel it watching whoever was closest to me. I backed up along the wall. The jack-o'-lanterns went out one by one, not with breath but with a pinch that left a brown smear at each wick. The Dogman was not playing. It was counting. I called my son's name in my chest and did not let it out. I moved along the edge of the field toward the neighborhood side gate, the one that never shut right. A cluster of small children was huddled there, arguing about who would squeeze through first. I told them not to squeeze. I told them to push. They pushed. The gate swung out as if it had never been stuck. The zipper sound moved on the other side of the fence, fast, then stopped where the gate gap had been. A paw slid through the bars and hooked the air, slow, feeling for faces. Nails scratched metal. Sparks popped like tiny stars. We moved into the street. The blue porch light was 3 houses down. It looked steady and tired, the way a light looks at 4 a.m. The dog behind the chain link had gone silent. The house with the skeleton had turned off its spider web projector. For a moment the street looked empty, like a set after the crew has left. Then a motion light snapped on and showed the Dogman standing in the yard 2 doors over, one knee bent, head tilted, as if listening to the same silence we were in. It hopped the fence without touching the top, a skip and a lift, and it was on the sidewalk. It did not run. It did not need to. It walked behind us while we tried not to break into a run, and each step sounded like a hand closing on wet fabric. I told the kids to go to the blue porch and not look back. They went. I waited for the Dogman to break into that easy, too quick lope and close the distance, but it did not. It let us reach the steps. It let the door open a crack. It let the blue light fall on our shoes. Then the crack in the door widened, and the Dogman moved faster than a thought, a blur and a breath and a shape at the base of the steps, hands planted, head tilted up. It did not lunge. It listened. I heard it mimic a voice. My voice. It called my son's name in my tone, not perfect, but close enough to turn his face toward the night. I grabbed his shoulder without turning around and said, "Do not respond." He stood like a stake. The woman behind us pulled, and the door swung open, and I pushed them inside. I turned and faced it. It looked at me with both curiosity and hunger, which is the worst mix, because one of those looks wants to take you apart, and the other wants to learn how you work. It put one hooked finger to its lips. It wanted quiet. It wanted the street to itself. It wanted the rest of the lights to go out without a fuss. The blue porch bulb hummed high and thin. The Dogman cocked its head again, then smiled in the wrong direction, where no mouth should have been. The smile traveled across the fur like a ripple, skin dragging teeth into place, then away again. A police siren yelped far off. The Dogman lifted its head and breathed. The smell rolled over me, hot old iron and pennies again, and underneath it a moldy candy sweetness, like a treat found in the attic after years. It backed away, step by step, not retreating, just easing the rope it had wrapped around us. When it reached the middle of the street, it turned and crossed to the hedge by the park path and slipped into it without moving a single branch. The zipper sound followed, then stopped. The night thinned. I could hear kids again, farther now. I could hear someone cry the way people cry when they have not admitted yet what they saw. Inside the house, the blue light buzzed over our heads. The room was small and smelled like warm sugar and clean laundry. The woman locked the door and slid a chair under the handle. My son looked at me like I was both hero and liar. I told him I was here. I told him not to repeat anything the voice said, even if it sounded like me. The kids we had brought in sat on the rug and cradled their candy like animals. The woman handed out water bottles with trembling hands. The police came. They swept the street. They took statements. They did not write the smell down. They did not write that the pumpkins had been pinched out by fingers. They told us to stay inside, and they left 2 cars at the entrance to the park path headlights washing the hedges with flat white. Through the window I saw the light catch a shape at the edge of the path. It looked like a man standing with his arms around himself for warmth. Then the headlights shifted and there was nothing. At midnight the blue bulb burned out with a soft pop. In the instant before the room went dark, I saw a handprint on the window glass at child height. 5 long marks. Not greasy, not wet, but etched in a way that caught the last light. The power stayed on. It was only our light that died. In the black that followed, I heard the zipper sound again, close enough to be the seams of the house. When dawn came, the glass was clean, and the pumpkins out front had all their candles back. The last one bore teeth marks that looked human. The park path had fresh chalk drawings, smiley ghosts and candy corn, and in the center of the biggest ghost, a set of prints had walked at a calm pace from one end to the other. Not dog prints, not human. Each one showed a long middle pad and 4 hooks, and underneath them a faint curve like a grin pressed into soft chalk. We stayed inside until the sun was tall. The street warmed and softened and tried to pretend it had never tightened its jaw around us. I opened the door, and the cold air poured in with a smell like dead leaves and pennies that had been held in a mouth all night. Across the street, the chain-link fence had bowed outward as if something heavy had leaned to look over, not to cross, but to watch. On the post, 4 shallow grooves sat above a 5th deeper groove. They were almost careful. They were almost polite. We moved out a week later. On the last night, as we stacked boxes and tried not to speak in whispers, something brushed the back gate. It did not open it. It did not need to. It wanted to remind us that fences do not keep out what already knows your voice. My son asked if Halloween would be safe in the new place. I told him the only true thing I had left. Safety is not a place. Safety is an arrangement, and sometimes the other party changes the terms without asking. When the leaves turned again the following year, we did not put a bowl on the porch. We went to a mall and pretended it was the same. It was not. In the mirrored glass, I saw behind us the suggestion of a tall shape keeping pace with our reflection. A dark shoulder turning with ours, a head tilted at the same listening angle. For a second I heard the zipper sound without leaves. It was only the space between the doors closing.